It's April 15th here in Seoul, and I'm Pyongyang. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with an escalating crisis in the Middle East. Iran launched a massive aerial attack on Israel over the weekend, with the large majority of the drones and missiles intercepted. U.S. President Joe Biden says Washington will not participate in any counterstrike against Iran, while Israeli officials are reportedly discussing the scope and timing of a response. President Yoon is preparing to replace the country's new prime minister and the presidential chief of staff. This is taking longer than expected after the two senior aides decided to resign following the ruling party's defeat in the general election last week. Donald Trump is set for trial, making him the first former U.S. president ever to face criminal charges and the threat of imprisonment. The historic criminal trial, which will begin Monday in New York, comes amid a crucial period as he seeks re-election in November. Uncertainties grow in the Middle East region after Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles from its territory toward Israel over a 5-hour period. Though most of the strikes were prevented, Israel pledged retaliation. Iran warned of even stronger attacks if retaliatory measures from Israel or the U.S. follow. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
It was an unprecedented attack, marking the first ever direct overt attack launched at Israel from Iranian territory. Hundreds of drones, cruise, and ballistic missiles were launched at Israel by Iran on Saturday night, 12 days after an Israeli strike on the Iranian embassy complex in Syria. 99% of projectiles fired by Iran were reportedly intercepted by Israel and its partners, with U.S. President Joe Biden during a call with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu describing the situation as a win, which demonstrated Israel's superior military capability. Biden also reportedly told his counterpart in Tel Aviv that the U.S. will not participate in any offensive action against Iran, though Washington's ironclad commitment to Israel's security against Iranian threats remains. With Washington seeking to contain the risk of a wider war in the Middle East region, a New York Times report said Biden had convinced Netanyahu not to greenlight an immediate retaliatory strike. However, Israeli Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz said Israel pledged to exact a price from Iran, although there is yet to be any indication given over the scope and timing of the response. According to the Israeli lawmaker, it is yet to be determined whether Israel will break all the dishes or do something more measured. And to such retaliatory discourse, the Iranian Armed Forces Chief of Staff warned that should Israeli attack, its response would be decisively stronger and more resolute, and any backing from Washington would result in U.S. bases being targeted as well. Meanwhile, after Iran's attack, G7 leaders convened and unanimously condemned Iran's attack and called for restraint from all sides to prevent a regional war. A UN emergency session was also held upon a request from Israel, where UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for a de-escalation of violence and maximum restraint, while saying people in the region are confronting the danger of full-scale conflict. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
In response to Iran's attack on Israel, South Korea strongly condemned the move, with President Yoon convening an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Seoul's foreign ministry released a statement on Sunday afternoon, strongly condemning the large-scale attack on Israel by Iran and calling on all parties to exercise restraint to prevent further escalation. This came after President Yoon called an emergency meeting of senior officials to discuss the potential security and economic impact across the world. He called on the government to thoroughly review risk factors and prepare measures for the safety of Korean citizens, businesses, and diplomatic missions located in Israel and the Middle East. Yoon also requested authorities to closely monitor and analyze global oil prices, the energy market, and supply chains. On the local front, President Yoon is preparing to replace his key aides and the Prime Minister after they resigned following the Liberal main opposition's landslide victory in the general election last week. The new appointments are taking longer than thought, as they were expected to be announced over the weekend. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
President Yoon is taking longer than expected to name a new chief of staff and prime minister, as his administration cautiously mulls its next steps after the general election last week handed the opposition a majority in parliament. Key officials, including the chiefs of staff, senior secretaries and the prime minister, offered to resign after that disastrous outcome for the ruling party. Yoon's officials have hinted that even Monday could be too early to announce the new appointments, saying they need at least a minimum amount of time to screen the candidates. This is perhaps to avoid any potential backlash from the opposition or public criticism that could arise from rushing the process. Of course, there is no set deadline, but it's unlikely to take too long, as the Yoon administration has committed to self-reformation, with a major overhaul of senior figures likely to become the first step. In contrast with Yoon's previous appointments, the incoming chief of staff is likely to be a political heavyweight who can skillfully work with an opposition-held parliament and make an astute response to major domestic issues and crises. The rumoured candidates are Transport Minister Won Il-yong, former opposition leader and National Unity Committee Chair Kim Han-gil, lawmaker Jang Jae-won and Interior Minister Lee Sang-min. More high-ranking staff, including senior secretaries for press, society and political affairs, are expected to be replaced. But the chief of staff for policy and senior aides for economy and science may retain their positions for continuity. Appointing a new PM could take longer as it requires parliamentary approval. The likely candidates include Kim Han-gil once again, as well as former Unification Minister Kwon Yong-se and ruling party lawmaker Chu Ho-young, who were re-elected for their 5th and 6th terms respectively, to fully reform the management of state affairs as the president pledged last week. His office is considering a major cabinet reshuffle and a restructuring of the presidential office to make it more receptive to public opinion. This could involve resurrecting the position of a senior secretary for civil affairs or creating a new division to facilitate better engagement with Parliament and the public. To set the tone for the administration's way forward over the next 3 years, Yoon is planning to convey his position on the general election sometime this week, possibly through a televised address to the nation, a cabinet meeting speech, or a press conference. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
China has sent its highest-level delegation to North Korea since the North opened its borders following the COVID-19 pandemic, further strengthening their bilateral ties. For more details, we're joined by Dr. Stephen Norper this morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. China's third highest-ranking official, Zhao Leji, met with Kim Jong-un over the weekend and said they'll boost cooperation. Is it likely that the leaders of North Korea and China will hold a summit soon?
That's a potential, and it's important that this meeting was the highest level representation from China to North Korea really since 2018. So it means that with the pandemic behind, that China and North Korea are recalibrating relations. Clearly, this comes on the heel of the United States meeting with Japan and the Philippines, and so it's signaling something of a counterweight development. And really importantly, China doesn't want to be left out relative to North Korea's improvements with Russia. And I think China has looked at those in a cautionary way, and hence they're interested in trying to get North Korea back on board and to signal a closer relationship between Beijing and Pyongyang.
Right, and how will stronger ties between North Korea and China affect the Korean Peninsula?
Well, they affect them very directly. Clearly, we're in a period where North Korean tests have been accelerated. There has been a high degree of rhetoric around the peninsula. And so tensions are very, very high. And moving to a de-escalatory tone is very important right now. We've seen how quickly things escalate. We've just seen that with Iran and Israel. And we know that this is a world replete with conflicts, to include Ukraine as well. And so trying to find ways to develop ties, and in this case, China sees North Korea as a way to check the United States and Japan and Korea, South Korea, in their enhanced relations, and that trilateral has grown strong. And again, they also see it as something of a complement, but perhaps in some ways a counterweight to Russia's improvement of relations with North Korea. So for China, they're concerned about a flashpoint on the Korean Peninsula, and they want stability. And this sort of meeting is what guarantees that, or at least moves it along for Beijing.
And North Korea is also reportedly working with Japan to hold a meeting between Japanese Prime Minister Kishida and Kim Jong-un. U.S. President Joe Biden also showed his support for the meeting last week. What's your take on this?
Well, the feeling is that any intermediary with North Korea would be helpful at this point, given the escalation of tensions around the Korean Peninsula. Kishida would very much like that, primarily for domestic reasons, as he faces an LDP vote in August. But Kim Jong-un knows that, and so Kim Yo-jong, his sister, signaled a heavy reluctance by Pyongyang and demanded a heavy price, which was not to discuss abductees nor nuclear issues. For Japan, that's a non-starter because both abductee issues, meaning Japanese abducted by North Korea in the 1970s, as well as nuclear issues, which are shared by concerns shared by Japan, the United States, South Korea, and the international community, would be on Japan's agenda. So we'll see where it goes, but it is largely at this point one where Kishida would like a meeting for domestic reasons. Biden, too, sees some benefits to having Japan, one of its strong allies, somewhere in the mix. And of course, Japan would be coordinating with South Korea, and that will take some work as well.
Absolutely. And today, April 15th, marks the birthday of North Korea's late founder, Kim Il-sung. And there's speculation that North Korea could launch its military spy satellite to mark this day. Will the North conduct the launch this month, possibly maybe even today?
Well, there could be a launch, and we should expect that they will try to do that, especially on the heels of South Korea's successful improvements in terms of satellite launches. North Korea has tried. It failed in its initial attempts. It does have a record now of recent success. It will try to do more. The question is, does the rudimentary technology that North Korea has put up there really allow any enhanced capability? Or again, is it just a way that Kim Jong-un signals to his public that he's prepared and making adjustments for readiness? The feeling is that North Korea's capabilities are very limited. The question mark is whether Russian technology will be introduced in this complex. And if Russia was to assist North Korea in terms of advancements in satellite technology, that would really warrant the concern of South Korea, the United States, and Japan and their international partners, because it would alter, again, the ability and the capabilities, especially given the lethal enhancements that have been made in North Korea's missile technology.
And South Korea put its second reconnaissance satellite into orbit last week. You just talked about capabilities. What's your assessment of North Korea's satellite capabilities compared to the South?
Well, South Korea's are generations ahead and markedly better. And of course, the U.S. And South Korea share a common interest in this type of space technology, SpaceX being involved. But South Korea has really done a tremendous job in terms of developing latest state technologies. And I don't think we should overstate it or compare it to North Korea's because South Korea is just so much more technologically advanced. Of course, the concerns are with the ratcheting of tensions around the Korean Peninsula. South Korea wants maximum capabilities in terms of what it's reading. And the United States, Japan, and South Korea want to be cooperating and coordinating on real-time assessments of what is happening with North Korea's missile launches.
All right, I guess we'll just have to wait and see when the North will launch its satellite. Dr. Norper, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, a pleasure.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump will appear in court starting this week on charges related to allegations that he paid hush money to prevent a scandal ahead of the 2016 presidential election. This marks the first time in American history that a former president will stand before a jury in court as a criminal defendant, with the outcome of the trial expected to have a significant impact on the direction of the presidential election in November. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Donald Trump will become the first former U.S. president to ever stand before a criminal trial, with his lawyers, prosecutors, and Justice Juan Merchan set to pick jurors in a New York courtroom on Monday to hear evidence on charges related to allegations that he paid hush money to prevent a sex scandal ahead of the 2016 presidential election. Trump has been indicted on 34 felony counts for falsifying company records linked to money allegedly paid through his lawyer Michael Cohen to prevent the disclosure of his past sexual relationship with a former adult film star, Stormy Daniels, just before the 2016 presidential election. While Trump faces a total of 4 criminal trials, this is the only criminal case scheduled for trial before the November presidential election. Trump has strongly denied the allegations of manipulating his company's accounting figures and that he had a sexual relationship with Daniels. He has claimed that the allegations are politically motivated by the Democrats. As the defendant in the criminal case, Trump must appear in court throughout the trial scheduled 4 days a week, excluding Wednesdays for about 6 to 8 weeks. So much time spent in court could be a crucial setback for the former president at a time when he should be focusing on his election campaign. While Trump's team of lawyers have made an all-out effort to postpone the trial until after the presidential election, it was not accepted by the court. Each of his 34 indictments carries the possibility of a 4-year prison term, with Trump certain to appeal any guilty verdict and sentence. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The number of people who moved to the capital Seoul for education purposes, including for going to college or for a child's education, reached a record high in 2023. According to the Korean Statistical Information Service on Monday, more than 1.2 million people moved to Seoul last year, with 92,000 of them citing education as the reason. That's the highest since relevant statistics were first compiled in 2013, and an increase of 9,000 from the previous year. Data also shows that while the number of people leaving the capital for reasons such as high housing prices and population density is steadily increasing, education and employment still remain the top reasons people move to Seoul. Korean literature has been drawing attention on the global stage lately, with some even calling it the K-book phenomenon. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin looks into what sets Korean books apart.
2024 has so far been a great year for Korean books. Last month, Kim Hae-sun became the first Korean author to win the U.S. National Book Critics Circle Award. Lee Gumi achieved another first for Korea by being shortlisted for the prestigious Hans Christian Andersen Award, while 3 Korean picture books won trophies at the Bologna Ragazzi Award. Novelist Hwang Seok-young's Mater 210 has also been shortlisted for the 2024 International Booker Prize. This success stems from Korea's decades-long efforts to export its literary works.
Since the 2000s, we've seen a surge in Korean literature exports, especially after Arthur Hangang's 2016 Man Booker International Prize win. The evidence is domestic publishers establishing dedicated departments dealing with copyright and intellectual rights of Korean authors, an increase in contracts with major overseas publishers, and minimum guarantees for Korean authors soaring from 4 to 6 digits.
The numbers don't lie. Translation requests for Korean literature to the Literature Translation Institute of Korea jumped more than 20-fold in 2023 compared to 2014. What makes Korean literature appealing is the blend of distinctive, yet relatable themes.
Korean literature offers a unique perspective shaped by Korea's historical, political, and societal contexts, such as it being a divided country, which attracts international readers eager to explore something new.
Many readers often try out Korean literature through their love of Korean dramas and films. But what attracts them is how authors incorporate relatable themes like human rights, environmental issues, and challenges facing the younger generation into their unique storytelling.
But captivating themes aren't enough. Skillful translation is a must to captivate international readers.
A great translation preserves the emotional depth of the original by understanding both the author's narrative and the nuances of the target language and culture.
That's why the Literature Translation Institute of Korea has been running its Translation Academy since 2008. Notable graduates include Sora Kim Russell and Youngjae Josephine Pae, the translators of Mater 210, as well as Anton Hall, who translated Chung Bora's Booker Prize-nominated work, Cursed Bunny. Looking ahead, as the majority of translated Korean works are currently commercial fiction, introducing long-standing classics could ignite even more curiosity and interest in Korean literature. 송유진, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Australia, where 6 people were killed and at least 12 injured in a stabbing attack at a mall in Sydney on Saturday. The attacker was fatally shot by a police officer at the scene. At a press conference on Sunday, the New South Wales police announced that 40-year-old Joel Cauchi was responsible for the attack at a busy Sydney shopping centre not far from the world-famous Bondi Beach. 5 females and 1 male, all aged between 20 and 50, were killed in the attack at the Westfield shopping centre in Bondi Junction. 12 others are in hospital. New South Wales Police Commissioner Anthony Cook said that the attack was not terrorism-related, but rather related to the mental health of the individual involved. In Niger, hundreds took to the streets over the weekend to demand the departure of U.S. troops from the country. This followed a strategic shift by Niger's ruling junta, which ended its military accord with previous Western allies such as the US and France, and instead welcomed Russian military guidance. Demonstrators called for the departure of around 1,000 US military personnel from 2 bases in Niger. They held handwritten signs with messages such as "God curse USA." Until Niger's coup d'etat in July last year, it was a key security partner for France and the US, but the new junta government has joined the likes of Mali and Burkina Faso to end military deals with Western allies, leave the economic community of West African states, and foster closer relations with Moscow. Russian military instructors and equipment were seen arriving in Niger on Wednesday, dictating the junta's openness for closer cooperation with Russia. Now to China, where 130 Chinese nationals suspected of crimes related to gambling and fraud were repatriated from Cambodia on Saturday to face trial. The arrival of the suspects in Wuhan follows enhanced cooperation between Cambodian and Chinese police to combat cross-border gambling and telecom scams. Over 100 Chinese suspects were captured in a recent operation, along with an inventory of digital equipment. Chinese police say another batch of suspects will be repatriated later on. Bayer Leverkusen have won their first ever Bundesliga title. Leverkusen were confirmed as champions of Germany's top football league, the Bundesliga, after a 5-0 win over Werder Bremen on Sunday. Striker Victor Boniface and midfielder Granit Xhaka each scored 1, while 20-year-old midfielder Florian Wirtz scored a hat-trick. Xabi Alonso's undefeated team have won the title with 5 games to spare, breaking an 11-year stranglehold on the league by Bayern Munich. Bayer Leverkusen have now gone 29 matches without defeat this season, setting a new league record.
Good morning. Only about a week ago, we had a peak cherry blossom season. Then it felt like we jumped right into the beach season yesterday with record-breaking April warmth in Seoul. But today's rain will put the brakes on abnormally warm afternoon temperatures, not going up much from today's morning temperatures. Right now, rain clouds are dropping showers in the western regions and Jeju, with a heavy rain advisory issued in parts of Jeju Island. The much anticipated rain should gradually expand to the rest of the country to ease the dryness in the air today. The south coast and mountains regions in Jeju could see more than 80 millimeters of heavy showers, while other parts of the country will see 5 to 60 millimeters of rainfall. Daily highs will be 5 to 10 degrees lower this afternoon, topping out at 19 degrees here in the capital, 20 degrees Celsius for Daegu, Daejeon, Gwangju, Gyeongju, and Chuncheon this afternoon. After the rain subsides tomorrow morning, we'll have typical spring weather with a threat of yellow dust sweeping into the country. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. Thank you for watching. We'll bring you more updates at the same time tomorrow.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generations.
Making news just for you. It's April 15th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Walter Lee.
Always lovely to be here.
Happy Monday. And Woo Hee-jun.
Happy Monday.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Commemorating 80 years since it was founded, the Korean National Police Agency has decided to change the design of cops' uniforms. This will be the first time in 10 years police will now have a new style of uniform. The new uniforms will be distributed from the year 2026. And Iran launched a retaliatory attack against Israel on Saturday with some 300 drones and missiles. Though most were intercepted and no significant damage was made, it marked the first time that Iran has launched a direct military attack on Israel. But Washington has made clear that it seeks to contain the risk of a wider war. The U.S. Deputy Ambassador to the UN on Sunday did say that the global body would explore additional measures to hold Iran accountable. And ending off with local news, an online post written by a woman in her 30s who wanted to get married but was having a rough patch with her parents recently went viral. The woman explained that her parents were against her getting married to her boyfriend of 2 years because of his height. Her boyfriend was 165 centimeters, which was much shorter than that of her family members. The post ended off by asking whether it was natural for her parents to be hesitant about her marriage due to her partner's height. And this spurred debate. Some said height shouldn't be a critical factor determining one's marriage. Others said the boyfriend could have a complex due to his height, which might be tied down to emotional or mental trauma and could cause conflict in the near future. Now, here in the studio, what did you guys think about this story? And mind you, that this woman is 164 centimeters and her partner is 165, meaning that they only have a 1 centimeter difference. Now, given that, I know, Hee-jun, you're quite tall, so what if this was your situation? Would this be a determinant as to whether you get married to this man or not?
Well, to be honest, I never had experience dating with the similar or short heights guy, to be honest. Well, height will be one of the options that I need to consider for my idol, but it's not the main topics that I need to check on. Maybe since marriage is starting new journeys together, so there will be more other things to consider more seriously, not only the height.
Right.
The height might be the importance or big advantage when it becomes the model or any other occupations, but it's not the option for me when it comes with the marriage.
I see. Though I do have to say, it does seem to be an integral part whenever you think about who you want to date. How's it like for you? Let's change the scenario a bit. Let's say you meet a woman, you're 180, so let's say you meet a woman of 181 or above. Would that be possible?
Well, no, let's stick to the would I marry a man who is shorter than me? And I think the answer is yes. No, but to be honest with you, the problem I have with this whole story isn't the fact that the height difference. It's the fact that the parents are getting so involved in the fact that there's someone in their daughter's life who is making her happy. She's clearly happy with this person and wants to marry him, and I don't understand why the parents cannot just deal with that situation and just ignore the fact that, yes, he may be below average in height when it comes to a male average, I think is 174 here in Korea. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. And the parents getting involved, I think, is extremely rude. Now, but if it were to be the situation, let's flip it around, where I would date a much taller person, it wouldn't bother me too much. I have dated tall women who are very close to me, close to my height, and it's never been something I've ever even thought about before. But yeah, the big problem I have with this is the fact that they are more determining their daughter's happiness over, just over a stupid height problem.
And speaking of intervening with someone's dating life, as we've promised, we've come back with the second episode discussing the dating lives of K-pop stars and K-celebrities and answering the question as to whether they should be allowed to date. Now, weeks back, we had Hyejun and Walter on our show to discuss the latest dating story between aespa's Karina and actor Lee Jae-wook, and also Hedy and Yoo Jun-yeol, the Han So-hee dating scandal that blew up. Now, Walter, why don't you start our discussion off by really updating us on what happened over the past few weeks since then?
Yeah, so actually, Karina and Lee Jae-wook announced their split only after 5 weeks of dating. Now, was this due to the amount of online abuse that they were receiving? I guess K-pop fans wouldn't call it abuse, more like they were betrayed, but they're wrong. People are certainly thinking that this is one of the reasons. Now, it's even spread so far to where CNN, obviously it's an American broadcasting station, even covered the story about the excessive fandom that in the Korean entertainment industry and how it makes it almost impossible for stars in Korea to date because of the backlash that they might receive. And like you said, the question was, should Korean celebrities be allowed to date? That shouldn't be a question at all. Right. It should be just simply Korean celebrities date each other. So it's a sad reality of Korean fandom.
It only took them 5 weeks since their announcement of dating for them to break up. Hyejun, would you like to add on to what's been happening in recent K-dating related scandals?
Well, it seems the idol relationship issues is constantly getting attentions of the generation and becomes media's issues. And it's not that difficult to find a news headline or first page of the article with these circumstances. And in addition, the actor Han So-hee and Yoo Jun-yeol, who made a lot of noise and arguments in our society a few weeks ago, also broke up about only 15 days after they started open the relationships. And this relationship was controversial, I think, whether it was a transfer relationship or not. And also, as even the Yoo Jun-yeol ex-girlfriend Harry, she was one of the main celebrity with these rumors.
Exactly. So whether it was a rebound or not, that also gained a lot of traction in terms of attention. And it was quite unfortunate to see these celebrities be in the spotlight over their dating fact, and then just weeks and even days later, they had to say they had to break up. And I'm wondering whether it had to do with how the public reacted, or so-called fans reacting to their celebrity crush's love life.
Well, it could have played a role. I think this was a completely different situation. If we take those two situations with Karina and Lee Jae-wook situation and compare it to the Han So-hee and Yoo Jun-yeol situation, I think they're very, very different. Some comments about the Han and Roo relationship were really inappropriate. Like, example, talking about Roo's looks and how he gets attractive women, etc. And that's a subject of controversy. That's basically online bullying, to be honest with you. And I do think that there was an element of the public's reaction as to the reason why that they broke up. I thought this world was changing when it came to accepting people for who they are and what they believe in and everything, with the whole movements of, certain genders, etc., etc. But turns out clearly not, where even in fandom, where there is a whole range of different kinds of people within Korean fandom, that they're still very judgmental. Saying all that, though, I'm Team Hedy all the way because I'm a big fan. But I still don't think that Han So-hee and Yoo Jun-yeol should have gotten the hate that they were getting online.
And speaking of the hate they received, I remember looking at different social media posts, and actually actress Han So-hee spoke up about it. She uploaded a long post about what her relationship was like with Yoo, because a lot of the public seemed to be questioning her whether it was a rebound or not, and different fandoms started clashing. So I do think that the public was very attentive towards this scandal. Hyejun, would you like to add on as to whether you think that that public reaction really pushed these celebrity couples to break up?
Adding more info, the Han So-hee also said that both of them playing the bigger role as the actor, and she said she doesn't want to consume more emotional in her personal lives anymore. And she also points out that it was not good to be on the public the medias with this type of the relationship issues no more. And in addition, I think it presumes that their mature attitudes to respond to this continuous media interest came out with such a bad emotions and results. And in addition, the continued excessive interest and speculation may have made them to think is this relationship was a wrong behavior or choice. And it is also facts that there was a different opinions in process of disclosing their relationship to the medias.
I think they would have thought whether this was worth all of that, because since their dating scandal first popped out, we've seen many different CFs or adverts that both of these stars had go off the table. And whether that had to do with the public is still a question that we need to be analyzing. But in the meantime, I do think, Walter, you mentioned a great point in the earlier part of our discussion. This seems to be quite a Korean culture, us being very attentive towards what celebrities go through. And how would you think that entertainment scenes in other parts of the world, like Hollywood, would view the way the Korean public views when their celebrity crush is having a relationship?
Before I answer that question, I think I'll have to also touch upon that it is a very Korean thing.
Yeah.
Even the word scandal in Korean is actually not what you think in English, right? A scandal in English means something terrible that has happened within the relationship or in any situation. But in Korea, scandal is just gossip in Korea. So that's what they say, that when two people are getting together, they call this a scandal, whether it be a mutual thing or not. So let's get that one thing clear, that it wasn't so when they say, the Karina Lee Jae-wook scandal, they were really mainly talking about the relationship. But anyway, there is a clear distinction between Hollywood celebrities and their relationships and Korean celebrities and their relationships. So the breakups, though, are the only similarities that I think that are different in the way that, there's always a blame game. There's always a side to be taken. It's always split down the middle. I mean, if we look at the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation, I mean, that was a completely different situation because there was a actual court case involved and it was very serious, but it turned out to be sort of the meme of the year. And but same with Korean breakups. There's always two sides to the story. You'll hear one side, the fans on one side screaming at the fans on the other side. But sometimes reputations are also damaged, just like Amber Heard's reputation was heavily damaged after that court case. I mean, with Korean breakups, they haven't gone that far as of yet. I mean, but they could go that far. But whenever it comes to breakups, there's always two sides and there's always blaming. So that's, I think, the similarities. But when it comes to the actual getting together, we're almost celebrating it. We come up with these words like Brangelina or Brennifer, or example. So we actually celebrate it, whereas in Korea, it's no, don't date for some reason.
But it differs based on the celebrity, I think. We mentioned this in our first episode when we talked about this issue. I think a lot of the fans think that some celebrities deserve the right to openly date once they've hit it off in their career. And I think it has to do with the fandom culture. They feel like they're feeding their love and attention to these stars, that they're basically nurturing them for success. And if you're too early on in your career, which was the case of Karina, many people think that she doesn't deserve to date yet. But then that's another issue that we should be thinking about. I mean, is it up to us fans to actually decide that or not? And another issue is once they break up, this affects their reputation. Whereas in Hollywood, I think it's easier for celebrities to get back onto the screen.
That's true.
But in Korea, it takes them a very long time to revive their reputation. Now, Hyejin, I'd like to ask you the same question. How do you think celebrities dating is viewed in other parts of the world compared to Korea?
Well, first of all, I agree with that. This Korean society is more conservative in terms of the males and female relationship, and when you compare with the Western country. So it seems like it's not easier to having the open relationship in Korea. But in case of the Karina, the fatal part was that she was an emerging idol, and not necessarily because of the Korean cultures. Like in Korean fandom, it was more important for fans to grow their own idol and making global star. But that's why these fans are more sensitive and says that Karina, in this time, she ignored this important factor and just dated. And more importantly, the same reason that as a result, rumors of relationship between the Blackpink Jennie and BTS V had relatively similar repercussions with that issues.
Exactly. And we asked our viewers from different parts of the world to say how they feel about celebrities opening up their personal life to the public, specifically in regards to dating. Let's take a look at the screen to find out what 3 of them had to share with us. Let's start with Leon. Leon said some Singaporean Korean celebrities are quite open about their relationships, sharing photos and updates on social media, or openly discussing them in interviews, especially if they're dating another celebrity. The general public is not really interested in celebrity dating news, though. Tasmia said, in Bangladesh, we have no negative feelings about celebrities dating at all. Chino said, in my country, it's pretty toxic. For example, they keep showing Taylor Swift 50 times each game of the Kansas City Chiefs play. Now, to better compare what people in other parts of the world think about celebrities openly dating, we're going to include a pop entertainment expert in our talks, so stay tuned for our live interview. Let's now turn to a Billboard K-pop columnist based in New York to expand our discussion. It's Jeff Benjamin. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Jeff, we've been discussing how Korean celebrities seem to have a tough time when opening up their personal life, especially dating when it comes to the public. Why do you think they receive so much scorn or backlash compared to celebrities in other parts of the world?
I've thought about this a lot, especially because this Korean news in particular has been all over the news here a bit. But I actually think it has a lot to do with the industry and the K-pop idol industry itself. Even that word idol, right? You're supposed to be this perfect person. You're supposed to be focused on your career. You're supposed to be focused on all these things that are, about being that perfect, ideal person in this career. And dating might sort of not seem like that is the most ideal thing that this perfect person should be doing, especially early in their career. So I do put it a bit on the fact that the idol scene itself has all these pressures on it, and the fact that for so long, so many K-pop artists had quite a short career length for a bit. Many a times I remember hearing K-pop groups only last 5 years, and you need to make the most of those 5 years. And, luckily that's changing, definitely thanks to the international interest. But I think that's a lot of where that pressure comes in, especially is sort of the rules of the idol scene.
Well, is there a case in the States like Aespa's Karina or Han So-hee or Ru Jun-yeol where a celebrity couple revealed their breakup shortly after the public expressed their discontent?
I was thinking a lot about this, and it's like here in the US, we really, and like the Western side, we really quite love these relationships. In fact, like you said, they're sometimes like used as publicity means or marketing means, with the nicknames and whatnot. So I was thinking about it, and, one example that kind of comes to mind, Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, they actually talked about how this like intense media scrutiny on their movie that wasn't well received. They were engaged and they actually called off their wedding. And even though their relationship was about 2 years, they did end up calling it off. They said like partially due to the intense media backlash. There's been certain people like Taylor Swift boyfriends who seemingly might have not lasted as long due to, the public or fan response. But all in all, I'd say it's kind of tough to find those exact means in terms of, someone like Karina, where she had to apologize for the relationship.
Yeah, in a handwritten letter that she uploaded on her social media.
I do have one more question though. Like, what do you think is the biggest difference between the Korean public and American public when it comes to accepting their celebrity crush dating life?
To me, it kind of sounds like, or to me, I feel like it goes back even to that idea about idols, right? Here in America or the West, we refer to, musicians simply as artists, no matter if they were created by a record label or if they built themselves up from performing on the streets. You know, everyone is an artist. And I think when that word and that idea of idol, right, there's a different perception of maybe that, you know, an idol doesn't, you know, think about dating or doesn't have those real life human experiences. And instead, you know, I think very much so, you know, in the West, you know, there's pressures to being a celebrity, no matter what kind of celebrity you are. But I think, you know, there's a larger understanding of, you know, that they are human. There's no perfect person. There's no ideal time to date or to not date. You know, celebrities are afforded that luxury, whether or not it will ultimately be good for their careers. I mean, you could go all the way back to John Lennon and Yoko Ono dating, and people said that's what broke up the Beatles. But, you know, you can have any opinions you want. But for the most part, I think regardless of whether people approve or disapprove of the relationship, they're going to at least accept that the relationship exists. And, you know, usually the celebrities figure it out themselves. We've seen that with a lot of very quick marriages or, you know, 9-day marriages, 45-day marriages, if you're Kim Kardashian, things like that.
Right. You mentioned great points there, Jeff. I think it's quite fascinating to see how the vernacular we use, it really encapsulates the cultural nuance difference we have as well. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure hearing from you today.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right, and ending today's episode, how can we then facilitate a better, healthier celebrity fan culture here in Korea, especially when it comes to accepting their celebrity crushes' dating life?
How about worrying about our own problems?
I think that's the way to go.
I think if you have enough time to worry about your favorite celebrity's dating life, I think your life is pretty dull, in my opinion. And that sounds very harsh, but it's very true. I mean, at the end of the day, we said it on this show numerous times. Celebrities also idols as well, regardless of what you call them or what they're you know, known as. They are just human beings who have emotions and who have, you know, the possibility of getting a loved one to maybe even continue their relationship or their career. There's many people, you know, that's what you do in relationships. You're supposed to support each other. And let's just say, for example, Karina had the support with Lee Jae-hyuk's like blessings or whatever to go further with Aespa. Let's say she was going through a hard time. Then, like, wouldn't that benefit the band rather than make it worse? So I think we should just worry about our own problems.
Heejun, what about you?
Well, as I said in our first relations topic from last time, I think the most important thing that is to understand our approach as the fans that where everyone is the same person who living in the world. I wonder why these relationship or all the privacy that we do for granted only your celebrity can do or have. Of course, it's not like I don't understand your upset feeling and disappointments at all, but you know, I think it's the right roles and love of the fans that you understand and support just way they are in their personal lives.
And I'd like to take a macro approach, if I may. I think points mentioned, including you, Walter, when you said scandal in Korea, just refers to the fact that they're dating. But if you can see the terms that we use, scandal, idol, as Jeff mentioned, I think these all have nuances that reflect that we put them on a pedestal sometimes, which could work in their favor, but sometimes it could really disadvantage them and put a lot of these K-pop stars and celebrities under a lot of pressure. So hopefully, if we try changing the terms or vernacular that we use when looking into the K-entertainment scene, I think maybe we might see changes come about. And hopefully today's episode shed light on that issue. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And Woo Hee-jun.
Have to be here.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
Thank you.